This is a CBS News special report. I'm John Dickerson. Breaking news. 4 Americans have been released from Russian custody in one of the largest prisoner swaps since the Cold War. Paul Whelan, Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, Alsu Kurmasheva, and Vladimir Karmurza were part of a 7-country, 24-prisoner swap. And in a moment, President Biden will deliver remarks on their release. All participants were traded at one time on a tarmac in Turkey. 8 prisoners are being returned to Russia. Whelan has been in Russian custody since December 2018, a total of 2,043 days. He was convicted of spying and sentenced to 16 years in prison and held in a labor camp. Gershkovich was arrested in March 2023 and convicted of espionage charges. He's been detained for 491 days. Russian-American journalist Alsu Kurmasheva was also released after nearly a year in Russian custody. The 47-year-old, who works for the U.S. government-funded Radio Free Europe, was convicted of spreading false information about the Russian army. Here now, we expect President Biden to make it to the podium, and we'll just wait for a moment. But in the interim, let's bring in our Chief White House correspondent, Nancy Cordes, who is at the White House. Nancy, the president issued a statement today. What do you make of what he highlighted in it?
Well, I can tell you a little bit of what he had to say, John. He said that the deal that secured the freedom of 3 Americans and 1 legal resident was a feat of diplomacy. All told, he said, we've negotiated the release of 16 people from Russia, including 5 Germans and 7 Russian citizens. He went on to say that he will not stop working until every American wrongly detained or held hostage around the world is released. And he added that his administration has now brought home over 70 such Americans, John.
Nancy, the shot we can see is just of a podium, but what we can't see is all the people who are in the room. Who is expected? There's supposed to be some family members in there, yes?
Correct. The president will be surrounded by the families of Evan Gershkovich and Paul Whelan. In Paul Whelan's case, these are family members who have been awaiting his return for nearly 6 years. They themselves have put out a lengthy statement, John. It is 3.5 pages long, in which they celebrate his return. They say he was held hostage for 2,043 days. His case was that of an American in peril, they said. And they added that the first years in captivity were the most difficult. They say those first years were hard when the Trump administration ignored Paul's wrongful detention, and it was media attention that helped to finally create the critical mass and awareness within the U.S. government. And it was really his family, John, that stoked that media attention. They did endless interviews trying to keep his story in the public eye, even as he was passed over in multiple prisoner swaps, including the swap that brought home Trevor Reed, the one that brought home Brittany Griner. He was not included, which was extremely painful for his family.
And Nancy, as we wait here for the president to make his way to the podium, I wonder what you made of, in his statement, the president said, "This is a powerful example of why it's vital to have friends in the world whom you can trust and depend on. Our alliances make Americans safer." That is a core belief of this president.
Correct. And what he's talking about specifically there, John, is the fact that the Russians insisted for months, if not years, that any prisoner swap that would bring home these individuals would have to include Vadim Krasikov, who's being held in Germany.
And Nancy, here now, President Biden.
You got everybody? Well, good afternoon. And this is a very good afternoon. A very good afternoon. Today, we're bringing home Paul, Evan, Alsu, Vladimir. 3 American citizens and 1 American green card holder. All 4 have been imprisoned unjustly in Russia. Paul for nearly 6 years. Vladimir since 2022. Evan since March of 2023. And Alsu since October of 2023. Russian authorities arrested them, convicted them in show trials, and sentenced them to long prison terms with absolutely no legitimate reason whatsoever, none. Paul, a former Marine, was in Russia for a wedding. Evan, a journalist with a Russian, in Russia, was in Russia, assigned by the Wall Street Journal. Alsu, also a journalist, was in Russia to see family. All three falsely accused of being spies. And Vladimir, who was a Russian citizen by birth and holds an American green card, is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and was a pallbearer at my friend John McCain's funeral with me. He spoke out against Putin's regime, and for that he was convicted of treason. And now, their brutal ordeal is over, and they're free. Moments ago, the families and I were able to speak to them on the telephone from the Oval Office. They're out of Russia. Earlier today, they were flown to Turkey, and soon they'll be wheels up on their way home to see their families. This is an incredible relief for all the family members gathered here. It's a relief to the friends and colleagues all across the country who've been praying for this day for a long time. The deal that made this possible was a feat of diplomacy and friendship. Multiple countries helped get this done. They joined the difficult, complex negotiations at my request, and I personally thank them all again. And I've thanked them personally, and I'll thank them again. All told, Russia has released 16 prisoners. 8 Russians who are being held in the West will be sent home as well. These 16 prisoners from Russia that Russia has released include 4 Americans, 5 Germans, 7 Russian citizens who are political prisoners in their own country. One of those Russians runs a human rights organization, Memorial, which won a Nobel Prize in 2022. Putin threw him in prison for voicing opposition to the war in Ukraine. 4 others work with Alexei Navalny, a political opposition leader who died in Russia prison this year. Now they can live safely abroad and continue their work of advocating for democracy if they so choose. This deal would not have been made possible without our allies. Germany, Poland, Slovenia, Norway, and Turkey, they all stepped up, and they stood with us. They stood with us. And they made bold and brave decisions, released prisoners being held in their countries who are justifiably being held, and provided logistical support to get the Americans home. So for anyone who questions whether allies matter, they do. They matter. And today is a powerful example of why it's vital to have friends in this world. Friends you can trust, work with, and depend upon, especially on matters of great consequence and sensitivity like this. Our alliances make our people safer, and we began to see that again today. Let me say this. It says a lot about the United States that we work relentlessly to free Americans who are unjustly held around the world. It also says a lot about us that this deal includes the release of Russian political prisoners. They stood up for democracy and human rights. Their own leaders threw them in prison. The United States helped secure their release as well. That's who we are in the United States. We stand for freedom, for liberty, for justice, not only for our own people, but for others as well. And that's why all Americans can take pride in what we've achieved today. I want to thank everyone in my administration who helped make this happen. Our work did not start just on day one. It started before day one. During the transition, I instructed our national security team to dig into all the cases of hostages being wrongfully detained, which were inherently, well, we inherited them from the prior administration. I wanted to make sure we hit the ground running, and we did. As of today, my administration has brought home over 70 Americans who were wrongfully detained and held hostage abroad, many since before I took office. Additionally, I issued an executive order in 2022 authorizing penalties like sanctions and travel bans on those who hold Americans against their will. And my State Department has introduced new warnings for Americans about the risk of being wrongfully detained by a foreign government. Deals like this one come with tough calls, and there are never any guarantees. But there's nothing that matters more to me than protecting Americans at home and abroad. And so we'll continue to work for the release of all wrongfully detained Americans around the world. Let me end where I began, with Paul, Evan, and Alsu, Vladimir, and their families. They never gave up hope. We can't imagine what they've been through, all of you. Matter of fact, this lady right here, I think, was living in the Oval Office with us for a while. All kidding aside, can't imagine their joy right now. They're home. Tomorrow's a big day. The 13th birthday of Miriam. Miriam, where are you? Come here. You all know we have a tradition in the Biden family. We sing happy birthday on any birthday. You ready? All of you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Miriam. Happy birthday to you. Remember, no serious guys till you're 30. God love you. She's Al Sue's daughter. Now she gets to celebrate with her mom. That's what this is all about. Families able to be together again, like they should have been all along. So I want to thank you again to everyone who did their part. In just a few hours, we'll welcome home our fellow Americans. We're looking forward to that. God willing, we're going to be out at Andrews and get that done. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And this is a good day.
What did you say to them on the phone, sir? What did you say when they answered the phone on the other side?
I said, welcome almost home.
How do you keep countries, these so-called abductor states, from simply taking more Americans in order to get more of their prisoners home? How do you end these perverse incentives, sir?
Well, advising people not to go certain places. Tell them what's at risk, what's at stake.
Mr. President, there are many events of these negotiations, and can you speak to the complexity of working with 6 countries to secure these releases?
Well, look, I'm not going to take the time now, but I'll do this later in the week. I particularly owe a great sense of gratitude to the Chancellor. The demands they were making to me required me to get some significant concessions from Germany, which they originally concluded they could not do because of the person in question. But everybody stepped up. Poland stepped up, Slovenia stepped up, Turkey stepped up. And it matters to have relationships. It really does. These things matter. Pardon me?
Could this improve relations with Russia? Is there any avenue for that after this prisoner exchange deal?
As my sister might say, your lips to God's ears, man.
Did you ever speak with Vladimir Putin about this, or would you be willing to speak with Putin now directly?
I don't need to speak with Putin.
Anyway. How did you weigh that decision of letting somebody out who sounds like got away with murder tonight?
I got home innocent people. Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Are you speaking with Erdogan or any of the leaders about this?
Say that again?
Are you speaking with President Erdogan or other leaders about this?
Yes, I've spoken to all the leaders about this.
What did you say to President
And by the way, as a father, look, you heard me say this before. I mean it. My dad had a simple proposition. Family is the beginning, the middle, and the end. Blood of my blood, bone of my bone. I can think of nothing more consequential. I mean it sincerely. And having lost family, not in a different way, and not knowing what's happening, the circumstance when they're accidental, health, it matters.
Mr. President, what did Germany ask for in response for their cooperation?
Nothing.
President Biden,
What did Chancellor Scholz say?
President Trump has said repeatedly that he could have gotten the hostages out without giving anything in exchange. What do you say to that? What do you say to President Trump now, former president?
Why didn't he do it when he was president?
Sir, what did Chancellor Scholz say?
Thank you guys.
That's President Biden speaking at the White House after this extraordinary prisoner swap. Let's go now to Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes. Nancy, your reaction?
Well, the president talked about how complicated this diplomatic feat was. And just to give you a sense, John, of how complicated it was, it involved more than half a dozen countries: the U.S., Russia, Germany, Slovenia, Norway, Poland. Detainees in all of these countries had to be released. And he talked about how grateful he was to the Chancellor of Germany. And here's why. Key to this entire deal was the release of Vadim Krasikov. He is a Russian who was serving a life sentence in Russia for murder, for killing a Chechen fighter. As President Biden noted, initially, Germany said it could not release him, even though it was clear that Putin would not be releasing any Americans unless he got Krasikov back. Eventually, Germany relented, but in exchange, they got 12 Germans back. And so Germany's involvement was key to this entire diplomatic feat that, had fits and starts for over a year, but has now gotten done.
Praising there, not by name, but the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. The president also saying anyone who questions whether allies matter, they do. And just finally, Nancy, surrounded by, you've covered this president, those remarks he made at the end about family, blood of my blood, bone of my bones, surrounded there by husbands, fathers, mothers, daughters, the family who every night wondered, prayed whether their loved ones would come home. An emotional moment.
Right. This is a president who famously speaks to all of his grandchildren by phone every day. Family is very important to him, and the family members who were surrounding him have been lobbying him, in some cases, for years to get this done. The Whelan family was not shy about pushing this administration to work harder when Whelan was passed over multiple times in various prisoner swaps. So you can imagine the sense of relief for not just the president, but this entire administration, that they've now been able to bring him home.
Thank you, Nancy. Senior foreign correspondent Elizabeth Palmer has been following the prisoner swap closely. Liz, what can you tell us about one of the key Russians released, this Vadim Krasikov that Nancy just mentioned?
Well, he was a colonel, is a colonel in the FSB, the Russia Intelligence Services, and he sneaked into Poland into Germany in 2019 using false documents, and waited in one of Berlin's most famous parks, the Tiergarten, for a Chechen militant, Zemlyan Kangoshvili, to come walking by. Krasikov was on a bicycle with a Glock pistol. He rode past and killed Mr. Kangoshvili. He was arrested by German authorities and sentenced to life for this assassination in 2021. And as Nancy said, the Germans have been very reluctant to give him up because the crime was so brazen and so serious. In fact, the German court pinned his orders on Vladimir Putin, saying that the assassination was state-ordered. Putin, on the other hand, uses very different language. He's called Krasikov a patriot who simply liquidated a bandit.
You met, as I understand, Vladimir Karamurza, the Russian political activist. What can you tell us about him?
Very brave man with a great fondness for the U.S. He has British citizenship, was educated at Cambridge, but he has huge ties with the United States, in particular working on human rights. He was an outspoken critic of the Kremlin and of President Putin. And in fact, Senator John McCain thought so highly of him that shortly after before the senator's death, he emailed Karamurza and asked him to be a pallbearer at his funeral, which indeed he was. He also kept writing about the Kremlin and Russia's terrible human rights record and abuses while he was in jail. And he won the Pulitzer Prize, John, for commentary for those writings from jail. He's always had his head above the parapet, and many people will be so proud and so delighted to have him home.
Well, Elizabeth Palmer for us in London. Thank you very much, Liz. Let's bring in Olivia Gaza, CBS News intelligence and national security reporter. Olivia, how did this go down? So complex. Give us a sense of that complexity.
Sure, John. Well, the U.S. officials that we've been speaking to have characterized these months-long negotiations as the most complex in U.S.-Russian history and even U.S.-Soviet history, when, as we know, spy swaps hit a crescendo. And we're just now learning some of the details behind why that was the case. Nancy outlining for you more than 6 countries involved in making this swap. We have 3 U.S. citizens and 1 legal permanent resident now coming home to the U.S. 12 German nationals or Russian political prisoners headed to Germany. And yes, 8 Russian nationals heading back to Moscow, among them a convicted murderer who Vladimir Putin had his sights on for months. We also know this involved multiple U.S. government agencies, the White House, the State Department, and the CIA. While U.S. officials tried to keep these conversations in diplomatic channels so as not to give credence to the Russian allegations that Evan and Paul and Alsu were involved in espionage, the Russians insisted that they be handled in intelligence channels, the so-called special channel that the CIA has used in the past in order to arrive at these negotiations. We've learned Director Burns was directly dealing with his intelligence counterparts in order to keep the conversation going, and then senior officials at the CIA dealing with Russian intelligence services to get to an agreement. So there's so much more about the involvement of the State Department and the White House and the constellation of other Western countries that have finally brought this deal to a close.
You know, you mentioned that constellation of countries and this complexity. You mentioned the CIA director, William Burns, involved in this very secret operation. Meanwhile, he's also right in the middle of trying to reach a peace agreement in the Israel-Gaza conflict. Then you had the president, according to a senior White House official, on the phone an hour before he dropped out of the presidential race with his counterpart in Slovenia. Was there, Olivia, was it a all-hands-on-deck administration approach, or was there a point person who was tending this through all these levels of complexity?
John, I think it was a multitude of officials and agencies. You also had Secretary of State Antony Blinken trying to pressure Sergei Lavrov into agreeing that this be kept into diplomatic channels, but the Russians just saying, no, we want this handled through our special channel. You have the special hostage envoy, Roger Carstens, who is dealing with families and providing support and information whenever it's not classified to the families who are so starved for information. And then, of course, you have all of the unknown officials who are handling the complicated logistics to bring it to this point.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Olivia. John Sullivan was U.S. ambassador to Russia from 2020 to 2022. He is now a CBS News contributor. Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, can you just give us a sense? You dealt with these kinds of complex diplomatic operations. Just give us a sense of the level of complexity here, and how did this not leak?
Well, thanks, John. It's great to be with you. Yes, this absolutely is a very complex deal. When I was ambassador to Russia, and before that as deputy secretary, I was involved in prior deals. Some of them were one-on-one, one Russian for one American. Those were complex, involving all these other countries and all these other detainees. It's immensely complex, and any one portion of the deal that drops out may cause the whole thing to be removed from consideration. So it was very complex, and as Olivia said, it's involved the entire U.S. government, the intelligence community, FBI, Justice Department, State Department, etc. Very complex and literally a big deal.
Now, Mr. Ambassador, help me understand this. The president was asked at the end of his remarks why this isn't basically an incentive for the Russians to just take Americans to get their Russians back. And the president said he would advise Americans not to go to certain places. Does that mean Russia, and does that mean Americans shouldn't go to Russia at all? Absolutely.
The travel advisory for Russia is at the highest level of warning: do not travel. I tell friends and relatives, do not travel to Russia. Americans are at grave risk there. So this deal, and today we should be focusing on the Americans who've been released and their families. I know, visited many times Paul Whelan while he was in prison in a labor camp in Russia. I entertained Vladimir Kara-Murza at the U.S. Embassy several times. But what's not mentioned in the president's remarks, and what Americans are going to need to focus on in the future, is the fact this is a government, the Russian government, that considers itself at war with the United States. the Russian government will continue to detain without cause Americans in Russia and use them to extract things or persons it wants from the United States. This will not stop that. This is not a sign of an improvement in U.S.-Russia relations. This is, the way to think of this is, Russia thinks it's at war with the United States. This is, in effect, an exchange of prisoners of war during a war. It is not a sign of an improvement in U.S.-Russia relations.
And just very briefly, Mr. Ambassador, how do nations compartmentalize then? As you mentioned, it's a very tense situation between the U.S. and Russia, and yet this was able to go through. How does that compartmentalization take place?
Well, as several of people have spoken on this report, the role of the families and keeping their loved ones who were detained in Russia front and center of our politicians in the United States or officials in the United States who feel that emotional tug to get Americans out, which is why I say it's important for us to celebrate today their release. But an autocrat like Putin doesn't have that same pressure to get Russians released from the United States. And the Russians that are being released, they're convicted criminals. They're not innocents.
An excellent point to keep us focused on celebrating today, which we will do. Former Russian Ambassador John Sullivan, thank you so much. To recap, our breaking news: 4 Americans are free from Russian prisons after a complex trade, one of the largest since the Cold War. Paul Whelan, Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, Alsu Kuramasheva, and Vladimir Karamurza were part of a 7-country, 24-prisoner swap. Our coverage will continue on CBS News 24/7, your local news, and tonight on the CBS Evening News. This has been a CBS News special report. I'm John Dickerson in New York.